Welcome back to DBL. Is your truth enough? For Franky Carrillo, it wasn't. In a battle of he said versus he said, Franky lost, and with it, 20 years of his life. That's today's Freedom Files, wrongfully convicted.
January 18th, 1991. 6 teenage boys are standing outside a home in Linwood, California. 41-year-old Donald Sarpy, the father of one of the boys, steps into the driveway. A car approaches, and a man inside opens fire. Donald is shot and killed.
I used to live in Linwood, where the crime occurred. Now I was living in Maywood. And so I wasn't aware of, what was going on or what crimes were committed.
Police show a photo lineup to one of the boys. 16-year-old Franky Carrillo is in one of the pictures.
Years prior, when I was still living in Linwood, they were just doing what they did, which was racial profile the youngsters. I was pulled over on my bicycle, me and a bunch of other friends, and the cop just said, "Hey, what are you guys up to?" And then the final question was, "Do you mind if I take your picture?" No one said no. Everyone's underage, and here's a law enforcement officer. So we said, sure.
The teen names Franky as the shooter. He is arrested and charged with murder and attempted murder. There is no physical evidence tying Franky to the crime. Instead, the case hinges on Scotty Turner, the boy who chose Franky's photo the night of the crime.
But the DA understood that wasn't enough. What we know now was that Scotty went and told the other boys that if they ever show you photographs, pick picture number one. It went from one boy saying that I was a murderer to now 6 boys saying that I was a murderer.
To the DA's surprise, jurors split and Franky's case is declared a mistrial. Then another stroke of luck for the teen, Scotty recants his statement. But despite the change to the case, the DA pushes forward with a second trial.
The evidence had been polished on the witnesses' end, and I think mine went the wrong way.
Franky is found guilty and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison.
Someone gave me some great advice to just make some noise. The idea was to write letters.
For 20 years, Franky writes letters to the outside world with hopes that someone will hear his story and help.
We're really talking about like miracle level thinking here, which is almost like foolish. And I'm sure people were thinking, just Franky, let it go, man, just stop.
While thumbing through an old file from his investigator, Franky finds startling new evidence.
And lo and behold, in that file, I discovered a 3 or 4 page in legal yellow paper, a handwritten, what looked like a confession by someone.
But the biggest turn in his case comes from his witnesses. All of them join Scotty and recant their statements. They officially admit that they made a mistake. In March 2011, Franky's conviction is vacated.
The petition is granted. The conviction of petitioner Francisco Carrillo Jr. is set aside and judgment is vacated.
And he is released from prison.
I went in at 16 and I was now 37 years old. And the judge said, you're free to go. Have a good life. And I walked out.
1 month later, the case against him is dismissed and Franky is a free man after serving 20 years behind bars.
Franky, welcome to DBL.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me.
You've overcome so much adversity. Your case resulted in a mistrial, but you were found guilty at your second trial. What was going through your head?
I was a naive 16-year-old boy when I was arrested. I believed that people were going to go to court and tell the truth, and this would all be resolved. And unfortunately for me, that's not what happened. People came to court, lied. And so when I heard the verdict come back with the guilty decision from the jurors, I was devastated. I fell quickly into a state of mind of just like, what is going on? Sadness, depression, stress, and then, I'm a human being and just trying to hold on tight.
Your case rested solely on the testimony of teenagers, all of whom eventually recanted. What are your feelings towards those men right now?
These boys were manipulated. They were used, sadly, by a lone deputy who was operating under this pretense that he was above the law. And so when they were testifying, they were really just following orders. And so what I think about them now after all these years, nearly 30 years after their initial testimony, is I feel bad that the system would allow that to happen. you know, because they have to live with the fact too that they were involved in a conspiracy, a framing. You know, they had a chance to come forward and tell the truth, which is liberating, I suppose, for them as well. I hold no animosity towards them, and I wish them the best.
Wow, you are an incredible person, Franky. And speaking of corruption, a deputy from your case was found to be a member of the Linwood Vikings, which to our viewers is a secret gang of police officers with neo-Nazi ties. How do you think that that deputy affected your case?
You know, it's at the core of my case. You know, this deputy was an overzealous deputy who was overstepping his bounds. So here is a homicide investigation, and here's a lone deputy trying to move up the ranks in his own mind and solve the case in less than 10 hours. It's one thing to accuse an officer of being overzealous or stepping his boundaries and being a bad officer ultimately. When there is evidence of that from other legal cases that support that claim, he's retired now, which is great, but I wonder about all the other cases that he worked on that haven't been looked at.
I'm sorry, he's retired? Is he getting pension?
I'm sure he is.
Wow.
I'm sure he just, you know, he just walked away from this with, you know, maybe whatever you get, you know, a gold watch or a gold badge or something.
Here's the thing, you are, despite everything, not only, I mean, we are listening to you speak, not only are you so positive, but you are such an advocate. You currently serve. Are you hoping for a future in politics? I sure hope so. I would feel more confident if you were representing the constituents.
Well, you're kind of jumping the gun here. You know, I'm
No, we're not, Franky. We're pushing you now. We're launching you right now, Franky.
Yep.
This is your kickoff.
Well, you know, Al, thank you guys for the encouragement. You know, I actually was elected last year, the Los Angeles County Democratic Central Committee. But it's, you know, it's you're in the game. You understand the dynamics of what's going on behind the scenes. And, you know, I came home with this advocacy mentality. From your mouth to God's ears. Let's hope that, you know, if I can get into a position of power someday, and, you know, be an advocate for my community.
Franky, thank you so much for joining us here on DBL. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Franky.
Thank you.